Howdy, my name is Nonat and I'm on a time limit. AJ, put in the Sonic drowning music so there's a sense of urgency here. Welcome to the tier list for the champion subclasses for Pathfinder 2nd edition. I've got like 20 minutes to record this video, so let's go. Did I give anyone anxiety? I hope so. It's no question that the champion is the king of damage mitigation in Pathfinder 2e. High armor class, high health pool, and a lot of toys to play with to mitigate and reduce damage not just for themselves, but primarily for their allies. Their main toy with this gimmick is their champion's reaction, which each of the 6 different subclasses or champion causes gets their own unique reaction that, while they work similar on a base fundamental level, all have their own little quirks that make them unique. In fact, the preferred reaction you want to use is the main thing that will lead you to decide which subclass you want to take. So, with the Pathfinder 2e remaster coming up just in October, I think now is a great time to go over all 6 of the different champion subclasses and their associated reactions, because with the removal of alignment confirmed for the Pathfinder 2e remaster, I think we will see a future where you can play any kind of champion you want without those alignment restrictions. You know, you can be a good moraled tyrant or even a corrupted liberator. Also, since I'm so short on time, quickest sponsor plug ever. Sinclair's Library, 2 new books, tons of stuff for Pathfinder 2e coming soon. Pre-order it using the link in the description. Thank you! So, this tier list works pretty simply. Every single subclass is going to be judged on 3 different factors. The subclass's power, flavor, and fun factor. Power is simply that. Just how much impact does this subclass have at the table, primarily in combat. Flavor is how much the mechanical elements of each subclass present the feel of that identity. You know, does the tyrant's abilities make you feel like a tyrant? And fun factor is just how much fun there is to be had with each of these subclasses. This is the most subjective of these 3 factors because what is most fun to me will not always be most fun to you. I'm going to be going from the bottom of the tier list to the top, starting with the poor anti-paladin. Paizo, how did you get this so wrong? And I'm not even talking about the name. I mean, people who have watched the channel for the last few years know how I feel about the name anti-paladin when the lawful good version is already paladin. It just feels like a boring choice, but the reaction for the anti-paladin feels awful. As a reaction, if you take a hit, you can increase the damage you took by 1d6 to deal 1d6 damage back to the target who hit you. This is so much gambling that it feels bad, because you might increase the damage you took by 6 and then deal 1 damage back. Suddenly, instead of taking a hit for 5 damage, you've taken a hit for 11 damage. Oh, but you got to deal 1 evil damage back to them. There's another little bit where all of your strikes on your next turn against that specific enemy deal 2 bonus damage, but that's still kinda negligible after level 1 or 2. It doesn't scale all that great, and overall, it feels bad, because not only does the damage you deal to the enemy scale up with level, but also the damage you take. So if you're level 19 and you use this reaction, you take 6d6 damage. If you can find some way to maybe mitigate or absorb evil damage, maybe that works. No, it doesn't, because you're not taking evil damage, you're increasing their damage. Why is this so bad? And the 2 extra class features don't save it. The Divine Smite adds 2 or 3 persistent evil damage to it when you hit them with your reaction, which is not that much once you're level 9, unless they're weak to evil damage, I guess. And then the Exalt at level 11 is okay. The Exalt makes your reaction into a sort of AoE, where you deal the damage to the target, and then all enemies within 15 feet of you take half of that damage. So now, if you're swarmed at level 11, you know, that 3d6 damage, dealing half to everything else within 15 feet, that's kinda cool. You become this sort of evil mini-nuke. I still wish it did more damage, but at least it's more worth it there. But if you're just in a 1v1 boss fight, this reaction feels horrible. The anti-paladin champion cause is going into D tier. I'm sorry, there's just nothing that feels good about this subclass. Now we're going to step things up a little bit because Liberator is going right into C tier. Liberator is a fantastic subclass for champion. Then you might ask, why then is it in C tier? Well, it's because of how situational it all is. Their champion's reaction is the liberating step, which if your ally is hit by an enemy and both of them are within 15 feet of you, you can use your reaction, reduce the damage taken by your ally, and then the ally can take a step action. This is pretty good by itself already. You know, if you're fighting something that has normal reach, 5-foot reach, and your ally gets hit by the enemy's first action, letting the ally step and forcing the enemy to get closer and waste an action, that's great. Additionally, this is where it gets kind of situational, is when you use this reaction, your ally can attempt to break free from a bunch of different status effects like immobilized or grabbed or restrained. This is nice when it happens. The problem is it doesn't happen that often. So sure, if you're fighting enemies that are all about grabbing, you know, a lot of beasts and animals have some free grabs attached to their attacks, that's when the Liberator comes in clutch, because you can not only reduce the damage, but also give them an escape check, and then they can step after they escape. It is huge. It doesn't even use their reaction, it's just a free action on their part, which is great. The problem is just how situational it is. That step is not always going to come in clutch, whether there's just ranged attacks, or if you're fighting creatures that may be large or bigger, which is not that uncommon in Pathfinder 2e, they come with reach, so that 5-foot step isn't going to get you out of their reach of attack. And things only get even more situational when they get Divine Smite at level 9, which does nothing unless the enemy was specifically grabbing or restraining your ally. If they were restraining them, they take 2 or 3 good persistent damage starting on their next turn. It's fine. It just sucks that this modicum of tiny little bit of damage only applies if they were grabbing your party member. I really don't like this, because if they're not grabbing your party member, this is a dead class feature. If you're not fighting anything that grabs or restrains, this is a dead class feature, and that feels bad, which is sort of an issue with the champion as a whole with a lot of their feats, is champions have a lot of opportunities to hyper-specify themselves, and if those specific situations don't come up, they're dead features, they're dead feats, and it feels bad, man. The Exalt is nice, at level 11 unfortunately, which I've always weighed the Exalt and higher level class features past level 10 as a little bit less important because far less campaigns actually make it that far, but with the Exalt upgrade, if an ally doesn't need to escape, then all allies within 15 feet, including yourself, can all take the step action, which can be great for repositioning. That can be fantastic, and honestly, I rarely do this, especially for a high-level class feature, but I hadn't considered the party-wide repositioning aspects of the Exalt, so I am going to bump Liberator up to B tier. As I often do, I have convinced myself with my own charismatic charm. I failed my will save against myself, and I'm bumping the Liberator up to B tier. These next couple are really, really close because they're all going to be A tier. That's right, we are only down 2 subclasses, and the rest of these are A tier or higher, and we're going to start with the Desecrator, my personal favorite champion cause, because it is just about boosting your own armor, making sure you are safe, and making sure nothing bad happens to you while providing no support to your allies, and I think that's really cool for a subclass. Starting off, their reaction is Selfish Shield, which is the same as some of the good aligned reactions, except you can only use it on yourself. If you take a hit from an enemy within 15 feet away from you, you reduce the damage you take by 2 plus half your level. And on top of that, you do get 1 extra damage on all of your attacks against them on the following turn, but nobody cares about that. We care about the ability to reduce the damage you take every single turn. This may not sound like a lot, but at level 1, ignoring 3 points of damage for free every single round is great. Now, the Divine Smite at level 9 is absolute garbage and is one of the things keeping it out of S tier, because all you get is that if you have a +2 or higher charisma modifier, you can use that plus half your level in place of the 2 plus half your level. Which means by level 9, if you have a 16 charisma, you're reducing 1 more damage per turn. And if you manage to get to 18 charisma, you can reduce an extra point of damage per turn. Which, if you have 18 charisma by level 9 somehow, that is 4 plus half your level damage reduction every single turn with your reaction. Which is good, it's just not a lot, you know? And part of me feels like a lot of people aren't going to be making a Desecrator with a high charisma score. You know, when I think of a Desecrator, I think of a scarred, pale, awful-looking person who kind of just wants to wreak havoc where they can. But, like we said, the removal of alignment, maybe this is just my alignment-tainted brain thinking in the way that the classes are presented. Maybe there is a world where you make a Desecrator who's just super selfish, but is super fabulous. I guess it would be fun to play, like, a bougie Fabio with long blonde hair elf who's a Desecrator, who is a good person, but they just really, really like protecting themselves. Too much. Oh, But the Exalt for the Desecrator is fantastic. When you use your reaction, every enemy within 15 feet of you takes a -1 status penalty to attack rolls against you. So not only are you reducing damage once per turn, but you're also probably an enchanted full plate mail with a humongous shield. So you're not getting critically hit, and you're probably ignoring a good chunk of attacks. This is one of the most survivable builds in the game, is the Desecrator champion, and I think it's great. It's just a few little nooks and crannies keeping it out of S tier. Next up is a fan favorite, which I'm sorry I couldn't get it into S tier in good conscience. I'm talking about the Tyrant. People love the Tyrant because of its flavor. The flavor almost puts it into S tier. This is like tip top of A tier, like A plus tier if it was there. It's just that the effects itself mechanically aren't super impactful all the time. The Tyrant's reaction is Iron Command. If an enemy attacks and damages you within 15 feet, it has 2 choices. 1, it kneels down in front of you and becomes prone, which is the most power move alpha thing I've ever read in a TTRPG. However, what's going to happen more often than not is them ignoring that command, which deals 1d6 mental damage, which scales now and again at different levels. And like the other evil causes, you get a small bonus to damage on all of your attacks against that target on your next turn. This is really, really cool flavor-wise, but mechanically it's usually going to end with, as a reaction, deal 1d6 damage, which is okay. You know, there's no saving throw, they can't reduce it, which is really, really nice. It's not that risky. It's really, really cool when the GM sort of lets it happen and the target does drop prone and kneel before you. That's super cool, but overall, mechanically, it doesn't do all that much. And the Divine Smite at level 9 is really boring. They just take 2 or 3 persistent evil damage when you deal damage with your Iron Command. And if they actually follow your Iron Command and kneel, your Divine Smite doesn't even happen. So they just kneel and go prone and avoid all of your damage, which also feels kind of bad. Like, sure, they're prone, but they can also just stand back up. I guess if you've got some attacks of opportunity on your team, it's not as bad, but as a Tyrant, you don't get one automatically. And the Exalt is another mini AoE damage where when you use Iron Command on a target, all other enemies within 15 feet of you must also either drop prone or take mental damage, which sounds really good until you read they always take minimum damage, up to a maximum of 6 damage at level 19. I don't care what you're fighting at level 19, even if it's 12 level 15 enemies, how many of them are going to drop prone instead of just taking 6 damage? This doesn't even proc your Divine Smite on all of them. Divine Smite only happens to the primary target. The 6 damage just hits all of them, so most of them, at least if you're thinking purely mathematically, mechanically, are going to stay standing. So unless you have a GM who is willing to play with you, willing to play with the power, just power stance, T-pose to assert dominance and make them kneel, most of the time, this is just going to be a little bit of extra damage, which isn't a bad thing. It's nice. I just don't think it fully fits the Tyrant mindset. And capping off A tier, we have the Paladin. who has a built-in attack of opportunity, which also reduces damage taken, which is phenomenal mechanical impact. I think this might be one of, if not the most mechanically impactful options for the champion. Not only are you reducing the damage the target takes by 3 or more at low levels, but you're also getting a free melee attack of opportunity with a super common trigger. None of this like if they move, or if they use somatic components, or if they manipulate, just if they hurt your friend. This is Pathfinder, your friends are always getting hurt! Divine Smite just makes it better. If you hit, they take the 2 or 3 persistent good damage, which most of the time, unless it's a really big boss, you're probably gonna hit. You probably have a high strength or dex score if you're playing a champion, especially a paladin. So, yeah, Divine Smite just upgrades it, you're doing even more damage, it's pretty good. And the Exalt is just hilarious. I guarantee there's some really, really fun broken builds you can do, especially if you're playing with a big party. If you're one of those groups who has like 7 player characters, and one of them is a paladin champion with Exalt, good luck, DM, because when they use Retributive Strike, every single other ally gets an attack of opportunity. Now, they have to be a melee attack, they have to be within reach, and it does take a -5 penalty, but chances are if you've got a fighter, a rogue, and a barbarian right up in there with you, you're dealing some damage! And at worst, this is getting an attack out of the person you're saving. The person who just took the damage and triggered your reaction is probably within melee reach of the creature who you're attacking. So you give them an extra attack, and it just feels great. It's such a fun teamwork ability, and because of that, Paladin's going in S tier. That's it. I've done it. Rolling on. Paladin managed to squeak into S tier, but there is no competition, no contest on what I believe is the strongest champion subclass in the game, and that is the Redeemer. The Redeemer's reaction works like the other good champions. As a reaction, when an ally takes damage, you reduce that damage by 2 plus half your level. Or, if the monster has a change of heart and chooses not to attack, the ally takes no damage! I've never seen this happen. This is a tough one. It's so powerful to think about. You know, it would almost be fun if this is a 50-50 each time, but that would be so broken. But as a GM, it's always hard for me to choose that, you know? Like, ooh, I could deal 3 less damage, or I could deal no damage. But the downside of dealing the 3 less damage is on top of reducing the damage dealt, they also become enfeebled 2. And normally I don't talk about the feat selection in this one, but there's an early one for Redeemer that just makes it even better, which can change that condition applied. You can change it from enfeebled to clumsy. I think later on you can make it stupefied. The Redeemer can counter any enemy with the right feats by reducing their primary check ability, which is nuts. And the other option is to deal no damage instead. Skip your action. Waste the attack. That's incredible. The Divine Smite is the same thing we've come to know. If they do continue to deal their damage, albeit reduced, they take 2 or 3 persistent good damage based on your charisma mod. Nothing exciting here, it's run-of-the-mill. But the Exalt, oh my god, the Exalt! If the target dealing the damage is within 15 feet of you, and it hurts you and your allies, you can use your reaction to apply Glimpse of Redemption to yourself and all allies within 15 feet of you, reducing the damage by half your level. You lose that flat +2, but let me tell you, if there's a spellcaster 15 feet away, and they hit your whole party with a 20 damage fireball, you can reduce all of it by 5 damage each. If there's 4 party members, that is 20 damage mitigated by 1 reaction. Doesn't use a resource aside from your 1-turn reaction, which, by the way, champions do get a feat later on that lets them use their reaction twice per round. The Redeemer is the ultimate in damage mitigation. You combine this with the right buff spells, the right positioning, everybody is safe, and it feels fantastic. The Redeemer champion is as S tier as they come, and the rest of the tier list should be on screen right now. Thank you, AJ, for organizing it. I really appreciate it. Love you. Also, let's get some love for AJ down in the comments. Like, I know there was a lot on the other video, but like, let's make AJ uncomfortable with the amount of love in these comments, all right? Like, not, okay, don't be weird, but be weird. And there you go. That is my champion subclass tier list for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. I would be curious to see your tier list. It's as simple as just giving each one a tier ranking in the comment. I want to see yours with explanations, without, not mandatory. This isn't homework. I'm not your teacher. I guess I am kind of a teacher. My job is weird. That's it for me. I managed to do this within my time limit, so I feel accomplished. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And until next time, no nat ones.